Have you noticed how artificial intelligence, AI, just, well, it seems like it's suddenly everywhere.
Oh, definitely.
From the generative tools we might use for brainstorming or even writing to the algorithms kind of quietly shaping our social media feeds, it's really woven itself into our daily lives.
It really has, almost seamlessly sometimes.
Yeah, maybe take a second to think about it.
Yeah.
How does AI actually influence your work or your learning or even just, how you interact with people?
It's a good question to pause on.
So today, we're doing a deep dive into something pretty foundational, I think, for our collective future. It's UNESCO's 2024 AI Competency Framework for students.
And this isn't just like another report destined for a shelf somewhere.
Exactly. It's positioned as a global blueprint, really designed to reshape how young people all over the world engage with artificial intelligence. Our mission here is to, well, unpack this framework. We want to pull out the most important nuggets of knowledge and insight.
Yeah, get to the core of it quickly.
Right, so you can quickly grasp what it really means to prepare students, not just as responsible users, but maybe even as co-creators in this, evolving AI era.
It's about education being proactive, not just reactive.
Precisely. Getting to the heart of how education can actually shape, rather than just sort of passively adapt to, our AI-driven future.
Yeah.
And here's something that honestly surprised me. It really sets the stage for why this is so urgent. As recently as 2022, only about 15 countries.
15 globally?
Yeah, just 15 countries globally had actually put AI learning objectives into their national school curricula. That's a tiny fraction, isn't it?
Wow, that really does highlight the scale of the challenge. And what's fascinating, I think, is just how quickly this need for a more standardized approach has shot up.
Right.
The public release of generative AI tools, like ChatGPT back in late 2022, that really accelerated AI's reach. Suddenly it was just ubiquitous everywhere in every part of social life.
It felt like it happened overnight.
It almost did. And while this huge technological shift brings amazing opportunities, let's be clear, it also brings pretty significant risks and really complex challenges for students, for teachers, for society as a whole.
Okay, so given that rapid, almost whiplash-inducing shift, why UNESCO? Why are they taking on something this massive, a global AI competency framework for students right now? What's the core driver?
Well, their fundamental belief, and they state this quite clearly, is that education isn't meant to be a, quote, testing ground for the passive adoption of AI.
Passive adoption. Okay.
Instead, its key role, as they put it, is empowering young people to co-create sustainable futures. And that involves rebalancing our relationships not just with each other, but also with technology, and importantly, with the environment.
That's quite a profound statement about education's role. It's active, not reactive.
Exactly. And that stark reality you mentioned, the 15 countries thing, that really just underscores the urgency. A recent survey they did across 190 countries confirmed this huge global gap.
Wow, 190 countries surveyed.
Yeah. And even among those few countries that were doing something, there was, quote, wide variation in how they even defined AI literacy or skills or competency.
So everyone was kind of making it up as they went along.
Pretty much. This sort of fractured landscape really highlights the immediate need for a harmonized, a common approach, a shared understanding.
Okay, I can definitely see how a shared language, a common framework, would be crucial for global consistency. But if there's been such a void, how have countries or maybe schools been defining AI competencies until now? I mean, surely something's been filling that space.
That's a really sharp question, and it points directly to a major concern the framework raises. In way too many education systems, there's been this void when it comes to public-approved framework.
Right. Nature abhors a vacuum.
Exactly. And what happens is the definition of AI competencies has far too often been influenced by training designed and/or provided by private companies.
Okay. The tech companies themselves. Huh?
Yes. And these trainings often focus, maybe understandably from their perspective, mainly on the technical skills you need to operate their profit-driven AI platforms.
Makes sense.
But that focus frequently neglects the broader critical issues, like the implications of AI for learning, for citizenship, for ethics. Basically, if there's no public standard, the market steps in and, market priorities don't always align with broader societal well-being or educational goals.
That makes perfect sense. So this UNESCO framework is explicitly trying to fill that void with a public, human-centered definition.
Precisely. That's its ambition, to define a core set of competencies for students that fall under four key aspects. First, a human-centered mindset.
Yeah.
Second, the ethics of AI. Third, AI techniques and applications, the more technical stuff. And fourth, AI system design.
4 big areas.
And these aren't just broad categories. They're broken down further across 3 levels of progression or mastery. That's understanding, application, and creation.
Understand, apply, create. Got it.
Which results in a total of 12 specific competency blocks. It's a really comprehensive, systematic approach.
Okay, so with that urgent global gap identified, the big question is, what does this harmonized approach actually look like on paper?
Yeah.
How does UNESCO define something so complex, so evolving for students all around the world?
Well, the framework itself is, I think, incredibly thoughtful in how it's structured. It's basically a matrix. Think of a grid.
Okay.
It's got 2 dimensions, and these specify those 12 competency blocks we just mentioned. So on one side of the grid, you have those 4 interlinked aspects of AI competencies.
Human-centered ethics, techniques, design.
Exactly. And on the other side, you have the 3 levels of progression: understand, apply, create. This whole matrix creates a pretty detailed map for what learning outcomes should look like.
A blueprint, basically.
Yes, a blueprint. Let's maybe dive into those 4 aspects first.
Yeah, let's do that. What's involved in the human-centered mindset?
Okay, so the human-centered mindset. This really focuses on the students' values, their beliefs, and critically, their critical thinking skills. It's about asking questions like, is this AI tool actually fit for purpose? How should humans interact with AI? It digs into concepts like human agency, recognizing AI is always human-led, understanding what it means to protect that agency.
So keeping humans in the loop.
Right. And human accountability, the legal and social responsibilities of AI creators and providers, the importance of human choice, especially in high-stakes decisions.
Like in healthcare or justice.
Precisely. And finally, citizenship in the AI era. This means critically understanding AI's impact, promoting responsible and inclusive design for sustainable development, and fostering lifelong learning about AI. It's fundamentally about ensuring humans remain in control and ethically guide AI's direction.
Okay, that's a really strong foundation. What about the ethics part?
Next up, and this is woven throughout everything really, is the ethics of AI. This isn't just like a standalone module you tick off.
Right, it can't be.
No. It encompasses ethical value judgments, embodied reflections, social and emotional skills, basically everything needed to navigate the principles and regulations around AI. And it goes way beyond just do no harm, although that's obviously crucial.
What else does it cover?
Well, the framework pushes students to think about some really nuanced ethical questions. For instance, proportionality.
Proportionality, meaning?
Meaning, is AI always the best solution here? Or do its risks and costs, maybe hidden costs, truly outweigh its benefits in this specific context? Is it proportionate?
Interesting. So not just can we use AI, but should we?
Exactly. And crucially, it also highlights AI's often overlooked environmental footprint.
Oh yeah, the energy consumption.
Right, the massive carbon emissions from training these huge models. It encourages exploring climate-friendly approaches. So it's a much broader ethical lens than simply avoiding bad outcomes. It emphasizes things like non-discrimination detecting bias.
Big one.
Huge. Human determination, making sure humans, not algorithms, bear ultimate ethical and legal responsibility. Transparency and explainability, users having a right to understand how AI works. Safe and responsible use, obviously. And ethics by design.
Building it in from the start.
Building it in from the very conceptualization all the way through the AI lifecycle.
Wow. Okay, that's far more expansive than just, knowing how to use a chatbot.
Yeah.
Which I suspect is what many people might initially think of as AI competency.
Absolutely. It really covers the broader societal, ethical, and even environmental implications.
So it's the third aspect,
Yeah.
the technical side.
Yes. The third is AI techniques and applications. This is presented as the, quote, most important and transferable technical foundation.
Okay.
It's about the connection between conceptual knowledge about AI and the operational skills needed to actually work with concrete AI tools.
Right, the hands-on part.
Exactly. So here, students gain AI foundations, basic knowledge of data, algorithms, how AI connects to other subjects like math, science, engineering, even languages and social studies. It's interdisciplinary.
Makes sense.
Then comes application skills, developing age-appropriate understanding of data, algorithms, maybe some programming, but also critically evaluating free and open-source tools like Google's Teachable Machine.
I've heard of that. Lets you train models without code, right?
Exactly. It's very accessible. Or maybe more advanced libraries like PyTorch or Keras that developers use. They also learn about common data sets used for training, like MNIST for handwritten digits or ImageNet for images.
So they understand where the training data comes from.
Crucial.
Yeah.
And finally, at a deeper level, this aspect covers creating AI tools where students might customize existing toolkits, but always integrating that human-centered mindset and the ethical perspective we just talked about.
So even the technical part is infused with values.
It has to be. And the fourth aspect, AI system design, takes that even further.
Okay, what's that?
This focuses on, quote, systemic design thinking and comprehensive engineering skills. So everything from defining a problem scoping, to designing the architecture, building it, training, testing, optimizing an AI system.
So this is more for the future AI developers.
Generally, yes.
Yeah.
The framework says it's mainly for students with a particular interest in deeper technical engagement. It covers problem scoping really well, emphasizing defining boundaries, goals, constraints, and crucially, recognizing when AI should not be used.
Knowing when not to apply it. That's important.
Very. It moves into architecture design, building scalable, maintainable systems, but again, applying human-centered values. And perhaps most critically, iteration and feedback loops.
Meaning?
Evaluating the system constantly. Is it robust? Is it humanistically appropriate? Improving data sets, maybe reconfiguring algorithms, and importantly, knowing when you have to shut down a system if it proves harmful.
Right. Pulling the plug if necessary.
Absolutely. A critical skill.
Okay, so those are the four big aspects. And you said for all of these, there are three progression levels. Understand, apply, create.
Exactly. And these levels reflect, as the framework puts it, increasing sophistication, proficiency, and ethical consciousness.
Right.
Level 1, understand. This is explicitly designed for all students. Everyone needs this. Basic comprehension. What is AI? What are the values, the ethical issues? Core concepts, processes, technical methods, and connecting it all to real life or social practices. That's the foundation.
Got it. Level 1 for everyone.
Then level 2, apply. This is seen as relevant for all school students, so still very broad. Here, building on understand, students enhance, transfer, and adapt what they've learned, the values, knowledge, skills, to new learning situations. They also start to critically examine advanced technical methods.
So using it in new ways.
Yes. And for many students, the framework suggests this level 2 might be their point of exit for formal AI competency development at school. It gives them practical, adaptable skills for life and work.
Okay. And level 3.
And then level 3, create. Here, students become, quote, conscientious AI co-creators, developing human-centered solutions to positively impact how AI is designed and used.
The future innovators.
Potentially. This level needs the integrated application of everything they've acquired, values, knowledge, skills, and it's often elective, typically for those really digging into that AI system design aspect we talked about.
Okay, that makes sense. So it's clear this matrix you mentioned, it's called Table 1 in the document, really does serve as that blueprint for learning outcomes. It seems like it guides everything from, curriculum planning to figuring out how good students are at this stuff, even how to teach it.
Yeah, it lays it all out quite logically.
It sounds like a really actionable guide for educators, for policymakers, for anyone involved in education, really.
It aims to be,
Yeah.
definitely.
So, okay, this framework sounds incredibly comprehensive, really well thought out in theory. But how do we actually get this from the blueprint stage into, the real world, into classrooms? What are the practical steps UNESCO is suggesting for schools, for governments, to bring this pretty ambitious vision to life?
Yeah, that's the million-dollar question, isn't it? Bridging theory and practice. The document does provide some pretty practical guidance on curriculum development and deployment. First, it really emphasizes alignment with national strategies. Apparently, around 70 countries already have some kind of national AI strategy.
Oh, wow. More than the 15 implementing curricula, then.
Right. Lots of strategies, less implementation maybe. But the framework is designed to align with and hopefully strengthen those existing national plans. They give the example of the Republic of Korea's national strategy for AI,
Okay.
which categorizes AI competencies for different groups, the general public, professionals, future AI talents. It shows how a national strategy can be structured to integrate these kinds of ideas.
So fitting it into what countries are already planning.
Exactly. And it also stresses the importance of target audience and tailoring. This isn't meant to be a rigid, one-size-fits-all mandate dropped from above.
That's probably wise.
Yeah. While it's a global reference framework, it's intentionally designed to be tailored to the diverse readiness levels of local education systems. It's a flexible guide for policymakers, curriculum developers, teachers who know their own contexts best.
So adapting it locally is key. What about the actual teaching, the learning environments themselves? How should this look in practice?
Right, that's where pedagogical approaches and learning environments come in. A really core point here is that AI, just by its nature, is profoundly interdisciplinary.
We touched on that. It connects everywhere.
It really does. It has complex links, conceptual, practical to math, science, engineering, languages, social studies, even art and design. So you can't really teach it effectively in a vacuum in just one subject box.
Makes sense.
So the framework outlines 4 main curriculum integration strategies for K-12. You could have it as a discrete standalone subject.
Like AI 101.
Kind of. Or you could integrate it into existing subjects, maybe like ICT or computer science. A third way is a cross-curricular approach, weaving it through multiple subjects. Or it could be offered as optional or extracurricular activities.
Flexible options there. You mentioned the UAE earlier. Sounds like they've gone for an integrated approach.
They certainly have, and it's a really interesting example. The United Arab Emirates interdisciplinary approach uses their Computing, Creative Design, and Innovation curriculum, CCDI.
CCDI.
Yeah, and it integrates computer science, engineering, design thinking, sustainability concepts, visual communication, essentially weaving AI literacy and related skills throughout multiple disciplines, right, from a young age.
That sounds quite holistic.
It does, and given how fast AI evolves, the framework also heavily stresses the need for future-proofing the curriculum design. You can't just write it and forget it.
No kidding. It would be outdated in months.
Exactly. So a modular curriculum design is suggested.
Modular, like Lego bricks.
Kind of, yeah. It allows for dynamic updates. You can swap out or update content modules as AI changes without needing to scrap and rewrite the entire curriculum every year. It's vital for staying relevant.
That's incredibly smart.
Yeah.
Essential, really.
It is. They also suggest age-appropriate spiral learning. This is a well-known educational concept, but really important here.
Spiral learning.
Yeah.
Revisiting topics.
Yes, exactly. Students revisit key topics or concepts at increasing levels of difficulty and depth as they move through school. MIT's RAISE initiative, their Day of AI program, is a good example.
Okay.
They cluster content around big themes like what AI is and what AI does well and what it doesn't do so well. And kids revisit these themes in different ways across different age groups, gradually building a deeper, more nuanced understanding.
That makes sense. You wouldn't teach a 7-year-old and a 17-year-old about AI ethics in the same way.
Absolutely not.
Yeah.
And finally, to make all this happen, you need enabling learning environments. The document says the most important condition is teacher training and support. Absolutely critical. Beyond that, schools need the right tools. Some hardware computers, tablets, maybe even those little Raspberry Pi devices.
Affordable computing.
Yeah. For software, they suggest open source options like the Ubuntu operating system, programming languages like HTML, JavaScript, Python, the visual language Scratch, and specific tools for AI techniques. We mentioned Google's Teachable Machine, but also things like TensorFlow, Keras, machine learning for kids.
Lots of tools out there.
There are. But what's really interesting, I think, is the emphasis on unplugged solutions.
Unplugged. Like no computers.
Yeah. Or low-tech options, things like paper-based activities, discussions, maybe using simple AI apps already on phones or pre-downloaded videos. These are especially valuable for teaching the foundational stuff, the human-centered mindset, the ethics of AI, even some basic AI techniques concepts.
So you don't necessarily need a high-tech lab for everything.
Not at all, especially not for the foundational understanding and ethical grounding. Initiatives like Everyday AI or AI Unplugged provide great examples of activities you can do with minimal tech. It makes the framework potentially more equitable, more accessible, especially in places with limited resources.
That's a really important point. So it's not just about what you teach, but how you teach it, and making sure it's effective and equitable, even without tons of fancy tech.
He do.
Okay, that leads us perfectly into the teachers themselves, and also, how do we actually assess if students are learning this stuff? What does the framework say about teacher development and evaluating student progress?
Right, these are absolutely critical pieces of the puzzle. The best framework in the world doesn't mean much without effective teacher professionalization and assessment.
Can't implement without capable teachers.
Exactly. Teachers need continuous opportunities to develop and update their own knowledge and skills. AI is moving too fast for a one-off training session. They mentioned China's AI competency framework specifically for AI subject teachers as an example. which defines comprehensive competencies needed by the educators themselves. It shows that thinking about teacher competency is just as important as student competency.
Makes sense.
The framework also talks about public-private partnerships, which can be helpful in supporting teachers, but it adds a really crucial caveat.
Which is?
These partnerships must ensure that any training or resources provided are trustworthy, anti-bias, relevant for AI competency development, and sufficiently brand agnostic.
Ah, so avoiding the situation where a company just pushes its own tools or platform under the guise of training.
Precisely. Got to keep the educational goals front and center, not marketing goals.
Okay. What about specific teaching methods?
They recommend things like cohort-based pedagogical activities. This sounds a bit jargony, but the idea is simple. Grouping students, maybe across different classes or even grades, based on their interest in AI.
Like an AI club.
Sort of, yeah, but integrated into learning. It fosters a community of practice where they can work on collaborative projects, support each other. It covers social and emotional learning alongside the conceptual knowledge and practical skills.
Hands-on collaborative.
Very much so. The MIT curriculum on the ethics of AI for middle school students is given as a good example. It's student-centered, inquiry-based. They do activities like AI bingo or trying to write an algorithm to make a peanut butter and jelly sandwich.
Harder than it sounds, algorithmically.
Isn't it just? Or building an image classifier using Google's Teachable Machine. It makes the learning really active, experiential, and relatable.
That sounds much more engaging than just reading about algorithms.
Okay, and the final piece, assessment. How do we know if students are actually grasping these complex, nuanced ideas? It's not like a multiple choice test can capture ethical reasoning easily.
Exactly. That's why the framework emphasizes competency-based assessments. Moving beyond just testing rote memorization, the goal is to measure students' mastery level against predefined standards. So what does that look like in practice?
It means using things like criterion-referenced assessments designed to see if students meet specific criteria, which helps diagnose gaps and provide targeted support. It's about assessing not just what they can recall, but their observable performance and also their latent competencies.
Latent competencies,
Well,
like underlying skill.
yeah, things like their ability to transfer knowledge to new situations, their adaptability, their creativity in applying AI concepts, things that aren't always immediately obvious.
Okay, how do you test that?
Through authentic tasks, using real-world scenarios, project-based testing, tasks that assess the integral competencies, the mindset, the ethics, the skills altogether, not just isolated technical knowledge.
Can you give some examples?
Sure. The document suggests things like having students debate whether AI should be used for a specific real-world challenge that gets at problem scoping and ethics, or simulating an AI Act courtroom debate to evaluate a creator's intent hitting human agency and accountability.
Ooh, interesting.
Or maybe designing an ethics kit for responsible AI use in their school. Or running a data biases lab where they experiment with how outliers in data mess up an AI model's performance. That's application skills plus ethical awareness.
Right, seeing bias in action.
Exactly. Or simulating being the chief ethics officer on an AI development team. Or simulating the corporate decision-making process about iterating or even stopping an AI model based on feedback. These kinds of tasks really show if they can apply the principles.
Yeah, those sound much richer than traditional tests. What about using AI itself in assessment?
The framework touches on that briefly. AI tools can potentially assist, maybe automating data collection from projects or personalizing assessment tasks, but it immediately flags the ethical cautions, data privacy concerns, the danger of using AI for high-stakes decisions about students, and the risk of reducing teacher agency and professional judgment.
So use AI tools carefully, if at all, in assessment.
That seems to be the message. Leverage it wisely, maybe for low-stakes feedback, but don't let it undermine human oversight and core ethical principles.
Okay, so pulling this all together, what does this deep dive into the UNESCO framework really mean for you, for our listeners? At its heart, it paints a really clear picture, doesn't it? Education isn't just, passively adapting to AI. It's trying to proactively shape it.
Absolutely. The whole framework seems grounded in 3 core assumptions, which they state near the end. First, education must develop competencies for ethical and environmentally friendly AI.
Non-negotiable.
Second, students need to be critical users, yes, but also potential co-creators and leaders in this new AI era.
Empowering them.
And third, these AI competencies aren't just one thing. They're a convergence A blend of that human-centered mindset, the ethics, the transferable knowledge and skills, and that future-proof design thinking.
It really is that interdisciplinary mix, isn't it? STEM meets social studies meets citizenship.
It truly is. And one more crucial thing to remember, this framework is explicitly called a living document.
So not set in stone.
Definitely not. It's designed to be continuously reviewed based on how it's actually used in different places, and of course, in response to the new versions and types of AI technologies that will inevitably emerge.
Because AI isn't standing still.
Not for a second. So education has to stay agile, stay responsive.
So as you, our listener, consider this really ambitious vision for the next generation, maybe take a moment to reflect on your own relationship with AI. How might understanding this framework, the focus on ethics, on human-centeredness, on critical use, empower you? Not just to use AI tools, but maybe to truly influence its responsible and human-centered development, even in your own sphere of influence, whatever that might be.
Yeah, it's not just for schools. The principles apply broadly.
Exactly. What small step could you take, maybe even today, to embody some of these principles like critical evaluation or thinking about proportionality or even just transparency in your own daily digital interactions? Something to think about.